Our last video went over some common definitions of density, mass, and volume. We are now going to talk about how to find mass, how to find volume, and how to find density, and then go over a couple practice problems. So let me go back to my little board over here. I forgot my pencil. So I told you that mass is the amount of matter in an object. And I told you that density is mass divided by volume. We can use the same formula to find mass. So to find mass, we can rearrange our formula of D equals M over V by multiplying by volume on both sides and getting our final as mass equals density times volume. We can also find volume using the same function of rearranging our equation. Volume can be calculated in two ways. The first is using volume equals length times width times height, which you probably used in your math classes. And we're always going to measure these objects in cubic centimeters. And this is how you measure things like cubes, squares, anything that's a normal shape. However, how would you find the volume of an irregular shape? Say, this marker. You can't take the length times width times height of this marker because it has curves, it's not all around the same length, it's not the same height everywhere, so you use something called water displacement. Okay, you use something called water displacement. Water displacement is when you fill a graduated cylinder with a measurable amount of water. A measurable amount of water. You are going to measure that volume of water and then place your object in the cylinder. After the object is placed in the cylinder, of course the level of the water is going to increase because you added volume to it. So you're going to observe how much water is displaced. And what displaced means is how much did the volume of the water increase. And then you're going to subtract the first level of water from the second. Please watch the supplemental video to show how water displacement works in practice. But like I said, we can use that original D equals M over V to solve for volume as well. So we need to get V by itself, so we're going to multiply by V on both sides. Cancel out our volume over here, so we're left with volume times density equals mass. Then we're going to divide by density on both sides to get our formula of volume equals mass divided by density. We can use these three formulas, D equals M over V, M equals D times V, and V equals M divided by D, to solve various problems in chemistry. I have two practice problems that I want to go over with you now. So our first problem states, calculate the density in grams per milliliter of 30 milliliters of solution that weighs 120 grams. Your first step in solving a problem is always going to be to list your variables. So when we're listing our variables, it tells us that we're calculating the density in grams per milliliter of a 30 milliliter solution that weighs 120 grams. One thing I haven't told you yet is that mass is always measured in grams. Okay? Mass is always going to be measured in grams. And volume is always going to be measured in milliliters. So from that, we can know that our volume equals 30 milliliters and our mass equals 120 grams. And we're looking for density. So our density is our X. So if we plug that into our formula, D equals M divided by volume, we're able to easily plug in our numbers to solve. So we plug in D equals mass, which is 120 grams, divided by 30 milliliters, and then you're going to plug that into your calculator. So take a moment and solve that. When I solve that, I get density is equal to 4 grams per milliliter. Now remember, we need to think about sig figs. How many sig figs can be in our final answer? When we're determining the number of sig figs in a final answer, we need to look at the number of sig figs we started with. We used 30 and we used 120. 120 has 2 sig figs and 30 has 1 sig fig. So we can use 1 sig fig in our final answer, so we know that density is 4 grams per milliliter. Let's try the second problem. If the density of an object is 0.21 grams per milliliter and the mass is 5.2 grams, what is the volume? So we're looking for volume. We're given our density of 0.21 grams per milliliter, and we're given mass is 5.2 grams. Now to solve this problem, you can do one of two things. So I'm going to show you your first option first. You can use the same D equals M divided by V calculation. So I'm going to do 0.21 grams per milliliter equals 5.2 grams divided by X, and solve like this. So I'm going to multiply by X on both sides. So cancel out here. So I get 0.21X equals 5.2. Then I'm going to divide by 0.21 on both sides. So I will get my X, or my volume, is equal to, let me solve it, 24.76 milliliters. Now I got milliliters because this is grams per milliliter and this is grams, so grams per milliliter. I have grams on top and bottom, so I'm going to get milliliters is left. Think about sig figs again. I have 2 here and 2 here, so I can only have 2 sig figs in my final answer, so I'm going to round this up to 25 milliliters. That is one way you can solve this problem. You can also solve this problem using the other formula I gave you for solving for volume, which is volume equals mass divided by density. So we would have V equals 5.2 grams over density 0.21. This will give us grams per milliliter. This will give us the same down here. It's just skipping this initial step. So we'll again get X equals 25 milliliters. One more thing I want to show you is the MDV triangle. So you can form a triangle that looks like this. Okay, and is the MDV triangle because of this, where M represents mass, density represents D, and V represents volume. And you can see that density equals mass over volume. You can see that mass equals density times volume. And you can see that volume equals mass divided by density. You do have some homework problems to work on, so please get started on those. And of course, please let me know if you have any questions about this material, as this is the major first math concept we've been going into. Thank you.